ayahe, ayayere, uyo, uko, kuno, apo, pano, mamuona kere nai.
Right, to December 2021, and today I want to quickly look at the latest developments in Zimbabwe, which has taken everybody by surprise. And specifically here, I'm talking about the announcement by the government of President Idi Mnangagwa that there will be quarantine for visitors and returning residents who are coming back to Zimbabwe. So this has taken everybody by surprise because this is more strict than any other country in Southern Africa. So there is no country in Southern Africa at the moment that has imposed such a strict rule for returning residents. And expectedly, people are very, very unhappy with the announcement by the Zimbabwe government of this quarantine rule. But I want to unpack for you what is going to be happening and what are the long-term implications of this quarantine in the near future and obviously as we go forward. Now, let's look at what has caused this quarantine. The quarantine is coming from the Omicron virus in South Africa, which is wreaking havoc. So every time I go to the hospital, so yesterday I went for my blood tests at the hospital, it's full. People are queuing up at the private hospitals. We are back to those days when there are so many people going to hospitals. The number of infections have risen in South Africa, and I think the South African government is behind in terms of what they are announcing. So currently, yesterday, the number of infections is doubling every day. So let me show you the numbers. So in the first day, which is sometime last week. So I want to quickly go through these numbers. You will see that the infections were around 3,000, 2,800. So it was around 3,000 for the few past days since Omicron was identified. So it was around 4,000, 3,000. And then suddenly yesterday, it went to 8,500 infections all at once. So what is happening is that the number of infections is growing, and as expected, the number of deaths is also growing with the infections. And to make matters worse, this virus is infecting younger people, as I said. At schools, there is a big number of infections taking place at schools. And in fact, some schools have decided to close earlier than normal because of the number of infections that are affecting younger kids. And so if we look at the announcement by the president of Zimbabwe, then if you take it in that context, let's say the number of infections continue to grow and double, it means South Africa is heading towards a lockdown within the next 14 days or so. So if the number of infections pass 5,000, like I said last week, if the number of infections pass 5,000, you are now moving towards a lockdown scenario. And this is where we're going because already the number shot up to 8,500. If it hits 15,000, we are now at the point where they have to lock down the country again. So now let's look at the announcement by President Mnangagwa, and then I want to analyze this very, very quickly, and we take it from there.
And to protect our nation from impact of a likely fourth wave, which the new variant, Omicron, will most certainly aggravate. With immediate effect, the following measures will now apply. 1. All returning residents and visitors have to undergo PCR testing and will be quarantined at on cost for days recommended by WHO. even if they present negative PCR test results from elsewhere. 2, a daily curfew running from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. will be imposed to limit movement and hence transmission. Only essential service categories announced in previous gazettes stand exempted. 3, all shops will open for business from 07 hours and they will close for business by 1900 hours. 4, number and behavior of all persons attending any gathering must observe and comply with WHO protocols, i.e. masking, social distancing, and sanitizing. 5, all COVID-19 related funerals will strictly be supervised by Ministry of Health and Child Care, environmental health officers, and technicians. 6, no liquor will be consumed at the bottle stores, which consequently see.
Right. So I think that is very, very clear. The rules are very, very strict. Today there was a further clarification, and I want to run through the further clarification that came out. And specifically, once a person is tested at the airport, which takes about 20 minutes, they would then be driven to a quarantine center in transport that is provided by the Zimbabwe government. And these quarantine centers are currently charging approximately $100 a night. So $100 US. That means for myself, I'm going with my family, there'll be 4 of us. That means we're going to be paying $400 a night. And we pay $400 for 10 days, which is $4,000 for us to be able to stay in the quarantine center there in Harare. Then each person arriving in Zimbabwe shall book accommodation that is designated quarantine center on or prior to arrival. Transport will be provided by hotels and lodges. People failing to afford quarantine accommodation and road transport will be handed over to government social welfare department. So this is very interesting. It means if you go to Zimbabwe and you can't afford the hotel, the $100, then you'll be taken over by the Ministry of Social Welfare. You basically be under the care of the government. Then the quarantine centers will be published by the Ministry of Health and Child Care, and these will be hotels and lodges. Quarantine is 10 days, and retest will be done at 7 or 18 days, and isolation is 14 days. Then there'll be no home quarantine. So personally myself, I can't go to my house to quarantine there because these are the rules. Then the Ministry of Health and Child Welfare, Child Care will establish airport PCR testing labs, and each PC test shall be done at a nominal fee yet to be gazetted. So there'll be a cost to this quarantine and also the test. So that is the first test when you arrive, and then the test on 7 and 8 days. You're going to have to be tested at your own cost. At the present moment, it's costing $60. So when I was in Harare, it cost $60 US for me to get tested. So for me and my family, that is 60 times 4, which is $240. On top of the tests that I've done here in South Africa, which cost 800 rands times 4. And on my return, I have to do more tests, which is $60 times 4. So basically, if you want to go to Zimbabwe at the present moment, in terms of cost, you must be holding with you at least $10,000 US to be safe. And $10,000 US in rands is like 150,000 rands. Right, persons designated as business travelers, e.g. those traveling on the government to visit the government, shall be exempted from quarantine requirements if they produce proof. And then there are no new measures for tourists. these are yet to be published. So if you're a tourist, if you're going to Victoria Falls, you can go there. There'll be no problem for you. Then crew or night stopping from airport of origin or in Zimbabwe will be exempted. The 30-day validity period for each crew PCR test will be reviewed. Measures for land borders remain unchanged. Essential goods drivers PCR HC validity to be reviewed. So if you look at what has been happening at the border, people have been sent for testing as soon as they arrive at Bay Bridge. There's a testing center there where people are being sent to test, but there's also a quarantine center at the border between Zimbabwe and South Africa, which is the NASA Hotel. So people have been going there. I've seen people displaying their reference when they are referred to go and test. I don't know if they're being quarantined at the border. So if you're going to be driving, you have to clarify that you're not going to spend 10 days at the border. Now, let's go to, I think most of these here are standard. These measures will be reviewed after 14 days of publication of this SI. And violation of these measures is an offense. Testing of arriving passengers will not affect turnaround flights. So these measures, as I said, are very, very strict. Nothing as strict as these rules that have been announced by the Zimbabwe government, especially in terms of the cost. And the Zimbabwe government has responded. Nick Mangwana responded to whether these costs were too high. And I want to quickly play that for you, that clip.
If you can afford to fly into the country at this critical time, you surely can afford to go into a hotel. What's the purpose of returning for festive seasons? You are returning for Christmas, aren't you? So clearly you can afford. There's nothing that stops you from waiting until this avalanche is gone, then come home. So I don't think the argument would work, because we are not forcing people to come home, but we are simply, you are choosing to come home at this critical time. And when you choose to come home, we are simply saying, okay, it's well and good, but...
Right. So I think it's very, very clear. The Zimbabwe government has made this decision. It has been announced by the president. It is very unfortunate that these measures, they are so strict, and many people cannot afford this quarantine. So basically, if you are a normal, ordinary employee in South Africa, you cannot afford to go to Zimbabwe at this present moment. Also, I do not know how this is going to affect the tourists. So many people travel to areas like Vic Falls. Myself, I was supposed to go to Kariba. I was supposed to go to Nyanga. And unfortunately, on top of all the costs, so the cost of my holiday was approximately 20,000 to 30,000 rands. Now I have this 10,000 rands, $10,000 that I have to put on top to be able to get into Zimbabwe. And I have to spend these 10 days out of the 17 days that I was supposed to be on holiday. I have to spend them at a hotel or a lodge that I don't know whether I'll be allowed to get out. I don't know what conditions they're going to be. And honestly, my kids cannot just sit in a hotel in Harare and be unable to get out. So it's a very sad situation. And I don't know if it aligns with what is on the ground, whether there was a proper risk assessment done to determine if these measures are correct for the kind of virus that we have and the nature of the virus, because these new variants are going to be coming over and over and over again. So if we take such a strict approach to this virus, what happens if after 3 months, another variant comes? After 6 months, another variant comes. So I think there is a need here for a risk assessment. So what the South Africans have done, they've said they want to balance saving lives with saving livelihoods. So that means, do we make sure that people don't die, but they starve to death? Or we balance people living and continuing their normal life, and also keeping people safe. So I think this needs to be reviewed, and also there needs to be clarity. People need to know whether these rules are going to stand or not. Most of us have already paid our monies to hotels in Zimbabwe, and we're going to lose out because of the nature and the extent of this announcement. So many people very, very unhappy about this announcement. Travel plans for December totally destroyed. But as I said, South Africa is going to soon enter into a lockdown if the current pattern continues, where the number of infections is doubling on a daily basis. So by yesterday, we were 8,500, and later on tonight, we're going to get today's update. And as you know, South Africa is behind. The number that they are announcing is way behind. It's probably a day or two behind. So they'll probably enter into a lockdown within the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks if the current pattern continues. This virus is very, very dangerous. It can kill people. And as I said, now there needs to be balance. There also needs to be a set of principles guiding the Zimbabwe government on how they respond. Because if they don't respond properly, they're going to damage the economy. And also, they are going to damage confidence in the country. Because there needs to be consistency. If we say we're going to open, then we have to open, and then we have to do it in such a way that economic activities can continue. If we're going to close, we have to close the areas that are necessary to close, not closing everything at once in a way that is not coordinated, in a way that is punitive, which is what I think has happened here. The way that they've announced these quarantine measures is punitive. Take, for example, I've got a vaccination. I've got a PCR certificate. I live in a place where, well, personally myself, I've had the virus. So it's almost impossible for me to be infecting other people if I meet all these conditions. So what should have happened is allow those people that are tested, that have got a vaccine certificate, to come into the country and do what they need to do. If people don't have those conditions, don't meet those conditions, then be stringent. Stop people who are not vaccinated. Start with those people who are very high risk. And I think this is where a quick revision needs to happen, because it is very, very depressing and damaging to the economy to operate in the way that the government of Zimbabwe has done at this current moment. Now, let's go to Simba Chipembere. In UK, it is normal for us to pay. Yes, I agree. If you're coming from South Africa, you're going to be quarantined in the UK. But remember, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Botswana, all these Southern African countries are under punishment by the UK and other countries in the West. Now we've added a punishment on ourselves. And I think that is a bit of a problem. I think this needs to be sorted out. Let's go to, then he's saying, so I must take a bus to Zimbabwe to get quarantined. After I take a bus, okay, I think this is the frustration. Many people are very, very frustrated with this quarantine arrangements. And I hope the government of Zimbabwe will be able to quickly make an announcement and allow those people that have got vaccine certificates to enter. If South Africa is allowing people with vaccine certificates, I do not know why Zimbabwe cannot allow people with vaccine certificates to get in. Also, they've said children under 61 months, they don't have to fulfill these conditions. That means if I bring my 10-year-old, they have to undergo this quarantine. They have to go for these vaccinations, all the tests that I am going to go through. My 10-year-old will have to go through those, or my 7-year-old. I find this to be quite taxing, especially for children. Then Tawanda says, why should I pay for quarantine? Okay, what if you don't have 800? I've already explained this. If you don't have 400, you're going to be put in a government quarantine facility, which may not be what you like. If PCR is negative, why quarantine? You see, all these questions, this is what people have been asking. And Samuel Danisampov says, it's not unfortunate. This is a right move to save lives. And I want to go back to what I said. You have to balance between saving lives and saving livelihoods. People want to do business in Zimbabwe. And these variants are going to come over and over and over again. Remember, a few months ago when I came out of hospital, I explained this. There's going to be every 2-3 months, there's going to be a new variant. So if there's a new variant, are you going to close the economy every time there's a new variant? This is where we need to have a set of principles. Firstly, you need to divide your arrivals. So arrivals from Southern Africa, those are almost similar. So Zimbabwe, South Africa, Botswana, Mozambique, Namibia, Malawi, and Zambia. If someone is coming from those areas, allow people to travel freely. Secondly, go to the people that are vaccinated. These people that are fully vaccinated, that have got a certificate, allow these people to get in. Then a vaccine, a PCR test from South Africa, you need to accept it because it's right next door to you, not a new one at the point of arrival. So I think those principles need to be in place. Then there's also need to think about the long-term impact of what is happening in the economy right now in future. For example, if people don't travel to Zimbabwe in December, there is less foreign currency getting into the country during this period. And that the impact of that for the whole year is going to be quite huge. Normally, the Zimbabwe dollar gains value in December, especially areas like Bulawayo, the economic activity picks up. If you don't have that a little bit of an injection of economic activity in December, the whole year is going to be bad. And things are going to get worse and worse in the economy. So I think the Zimbabwe government need to reverse this, and they need to reverse this in a very, very public way and very, very quickly. If they want to make sure that things happen, the economy picks up. And they need to do this for people that are vaccinated, people that are coming from the local countries, the neighboring countries, and so forth. They also need to make sure that they assure people that this kind of decisions won't happen again. We need consistency. So we really need to see a big jump in numbers before we can have a situation like this again, where people are going to be surprised with a quarantine announcement. So these are my opinions on this particular announcement. And I hope that the Zimbabwe government is going to be listening to the uproar that has been expressed by people. People are not just protesting against the government. I think this is going to hurt a lot of people. And the government needs to listen to the people here and make the changes, the necessary changes, at least for the sake of the economy. Allow people to come into the country, allow people who are vaccinated, people who've got a PCR certificate, allow people to move smoothly and quickly, especially those who are arriving through the airport. Maybe you can put different rules for the borders, which are closed anyway. So that is what I wanted to say. And I want to end with Simba here. He's saying, my opinion is that they want to affect those affected by the expired permits showing RSA to return home. I don't see any other reason for this draconian measure. So I want to explain something to you, Simba, what has happened today. The South African government has announced that anyone with the Zimbabwe exemption permit can travel freely with that permit, even if it has expired. They can also bank, work, and start in South Africa without any hindrance. So that is not the reason. I think it is just an overreaction on the part of our government. And we also need a risk assessment. You need a risk-based decision making on COVID. You can no longer make decisions that are sweeping and knee-jerk. So knee-jerk reaction to COVID is not going to work. It can cause serious problems in the economy, because in future you'll be having a new variant every month. What are you going to do when that happens? And the economy needs to kick. You saw what is happening in South Africa. Unemployment is now at 46% in South Africa. And these numbers are staggering. When I first came here to South Africa, unemployment was around 20%, which means in the past 20 years, unemployment has doubled. And when these things start doubling, they move faster and faster. And I think the Zimbabwe government need to properly think through these decisions that they're making, because a lot of young Zimbabweans are affected here in South Africa, and we're going to be affected over there in Zimbabwe. And West business people, imagine how many hotels they've canceled. If I cancel my hotel now, don't think I'm going to book again in future. I'm going to really wait it out before I book a hotel in Zimbabwe. Same to a tourist that has been blocked from coming now, they will never consider Zimbabwe again as a destination. They've lost money and they'll never come over there again. Similarly, people in the UK, next time they think about coming to Zimbabwe, it's a really big decision that they need to make. Should I even think about this trip, or maybe I should just leave it and fly to, like, the many countries now that are open. For example, fly to Kenya, go there and see animals, and rather forget about Zimbabwe. So I think this decision needs to be looked at. And then in terms of Falcon Shalom, it's better to trust our own tests, because there are so many fake tests out there. So let's do ours. I think I can't keep on repeating myself. And Mohale is saying, what is the rate of unemployment in Zimbabwe compared to SA? And what I can tell you is that Zimbabwe's unemployment right now, officially, it's probably around 70%, because most Zimbabwean guys don't look for jobs. They're into other things. But the South African unemployment rate is 46%, as announced this week. So these two countries are now getting closer and closer to each other. But the decision making that has been made on COVID in Zimbabwe, it needs to change. It now needs to be based on risk, not on just numbers. And I think this is where I want to end today. I do not want to continue here. I'm going to put up all these measures on gambako.com, and you'll be able to read them if you go out there. So let's see what happens sometime this week, because most of us were supposed to travel over the weekend. So if there's nothing that changes, someone like myself will probably have to cancel my flight. I cannot afford $10,000 to go and sit in the quarantine. And I'm sure a lot of other people cannot afford to do so. And this puts a lot of projects into jeopardy, not only just for me, but for a lot of other people who wanted to do their projects in Zimbabwe. The economic impact of these decisions is very, very severe. We need to look at this, relook at this. Even if South Africa was to go into lockdown, I don't think Zimbabwe should follow suit this time around. Zimbabwe should keep open based on risk. You can even shut down other activities, but tourism, business, for example, Vic Falls, you can ring fence Vic Falls, Nyanga, ring fence Nyanga, ring fence Kariba. If someone flies into Vic Falls, let them move in freely. So there's no need to look at this in terms of risk, rather than just a blanket ban on everybody. Right. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back again tomorrow. Let's see who is our guest tomorrow. If we don't have a guest, I'll be back on Saturday with Senator Kalipani Pugeni. A lot has been happening, and I've been unable to catch up with everything. And also, we'll be following up on the story of Zida CEO, Douglas Mnatsi. A lot of information has come, and I'm trying to sift through all that information to see what is worth to put in the public and what is worth to keep private. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon.
And to protect our nation from impact of a likely fourth wave, which the new variant, Omicron, will most certainly aggravate. With immediate effect, the following measures will now apply. 1. All returning residents and visitors have to undergo PCR testing and will be quarantined at on cost for days recommended by WHO, even if they present negative PCR test results from elsewhere. 2. A daily curfew running from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. will be imposed to limit movement and hence transmission. Only essential service categories announced in previous gazettes stand exempted. 3. All shops will open for business from 07 hours and they will close for business by 1900 hours. 4. Number and behavior of all persons attending any gathering must observe and comply with WHO protocols, i.e. masking, social distancing, and sanitizing. 5. All COVID-19 related funerals will strictly be supervised by Ministry of Health and Child Care, environmental health officers, and technicians. 6. No liquor will be consumed at the bottle stores.
Uko kuno apo pano mama wanna get it nice. I know pura meso, I know pura nzebe, I know kaya marigi. Kama kweto tikom, borongwe kweto tikom usasai. Kama kwe anogaya mari.
Kamba kwe uyo, anotara mari, anogaya mari. Garai mamunzwa, paninya pano, zvamunoda kunzwa. Zvinotaura pano, madiko kumunzwa mugovane.com. Kamba kwe vanogaya mari, vanotara mari, vanosiya mari. Kamba kwe vanotara fea kuti pamberi zvichafamba sei. Vanomuterere zvikubatsirei, mukufamba kwenyu zvikubatsirei. Mirai ndikudze kuti chokwadi pano chizere. Kamba kwe vanogaya cash, vanopa mafacts, vanotara straight, vane evidence, vane confidence plus intelligence.
Entertainment, current affairs and news. Kamba kwe don't come. Usasarire, kamba kwe anugaya mari. Mari.